press record. Hello, everyone. So I have the pleasure of having Dr. Nehar with me. He's secured a rank 4 in INICT of May 2022. This was his very first attempt, and he's currently an intern in Seth GS Medical College, Bombay, which is an amazing feat in itself to crack INICT in the very first attempt with such a good rank. So congratulations, Nehar. How are you feeling?
Honestly, I feel a little shocked. I think I have something that people call as imposter syndrome. I have not I don't trust that it's my rank, because if you ask me, I've checked the list like 20 times in the past 3 days to see is it actually true or not.
I'm sure giving all of these interviews must have helped that feeling sink in that, yeah, it is your rank. So well done. So I think the main aim of this interview is to, help others emulate your journey. Everybody has their own journey, that is true, but then what is it that you think you did correctly in your 5 years of this career that you think you have achieved this?
Okay, so basically like my journey, so it's kind of an atypical one. So in my second year, I decided that I want to go to US. So I started preparing for the USMLE. I did the whole first aid. I did U World. I gave step 1, got a amazing score. Like I got 268. So then after that, during my third minor and third major year, I just like read for my profs. And during my internship, I started preparing for step 2 CQ, but then all that COVID, and then it was like a big mess, like all the visa situation, the COVID situation. So, and I also was like very concerned about whether or not I was going to adapt in like living in another country. So I decided to leave USMLE and focus on Indian PG. But then in Indian PG, like the thing was, I myself wanted to go for AIMS in my UG. But then I couldn't do it because I got ranked 43 and there were only 37 seats. So I missed it by like an inch. So I was like, I want to try for Central Institutes again. So I started preparing last year, October. So like, I started preparing from the short subjects. I did all the short subjects first, and then I did my final prof and the third minor subjects. And then like I went through all the subjects one, and then about Unacademy, one of my seniors told me that like Unacademy classes, especially like Zainab Vora and Nikita Nanwani, they are very good for like, especially if you want to aim for Central Institute exams. So I started watching your classes. So I remember the first class I watched was the first Midnight Express. So I went all the way back to the Midnight Express. I saw that there were like 65 of them. Right. So I started with the Midnight Expresses. So I started from first to the last. Right. I used to see them at 2x. And during my free time, like I got a little bored of studying, and I got a little bored of solving MCQs, or I was traveling. So I just saw those classes on 2x. I finished like 3 classes per day. So over a period of a month, I was able to complete all the Midnight Expresses. Right. And then BTRs, because it was like very near to the exam, so I couldn't do all of them. But I made it a point that one day before the exam, I did all the BTR notes at once. So like all the volatile stuff gets covered. Right. Then CC and RR, I just did the subjects which I found that I was weak in. Okay. And that's about it. And then the regular, like I did like GTs, and from GTs from various resources, I read their notes and rapid revision. Right. So just to summarize, basically, you first covered your subjects in depth. Before that, in fact, like if I can comment on your step score, that's amazing. And I think a big contribution of USMLE has been there in your score, because I've seen like my friends also who've, given step 1 actually doing amazing in AIMS
and that is, I think, more because of stronger first and second prof. Those of us who haven't been exposed to USMLE preparation have very poor first and second prof base, if I can say so, if I can generalize. And actually doing first aid and a lot of USMLE resources makes that very, very strong. You said you have done New World, and your score, in itself tells me that your first, second prof was impeccably strong, and that also helps. So that is again one moral that people can take. If you can, I keep ranting about it, the utility of first aid and how useful that book is, not just for AIMS. I think even for NEET, if you can just further re-emphasize that, if you believe in it.
So basically, I agree like wholeheartedly. Like first aid is the go-to book to strengthen your first and second year, because in this exam, like especially the INICT exam, I feel that a lot of concepts like from first and second year they ask for from first aid. Like for example, they are asked the case of Wisport-Aldrich syndrome. Like what is the gene?
Right.
Like, so that was on first aid, and then like everyone says that in this exam a lot of genetics was covered. So like first aid has also covered genetics very well. Like a lot of the concepts which were asked in the exam were covered in first aid. So again, it helps a lot. Like first and second year, if also not only first and second year, but psychiatry and the biostatistics part of PSM, that becomes very strong if you do first aid properly.
Correct. So again, it basically brings everything together, so even unconsciously, your concepts keep getting stronger in medicine also, I feel, one, if you've done first aid well. So that is again one moral of the story, or a takeaway that students can have, that, you definitely should, those of you especially who are, just starting out, interns, final years, you should definitely use this book and consolidate. That is how I had used it. I used to consolidate all pharmac, biochemistry, micro in that book, and that is how I revised it. So that is one thing. Apart from that, once you've done your final years, I think you used Unacademy and my special classes predominantly to revise rapidly, and that is how they were designed to be. So you used all the short forms. So just for people who do not know, so more is Midnight Express, wherein there are 65 classes, right, which cover a bunch of different topics. So you just saw them for the classes. I mean, did you use the PDFs, or did you consolidate, go back to your notes and reviewed those topics, or you just used it for your own revision during transit time? Like, how did you use those classes?
So mainly, like I use it for my revision during the transit time, but like every class used to discuss like 5-6 like important topics. So whenever I used to watch a class, I used to watch it at 2x, and then I used to go listen to the class and see what's being discussed. And like so what happens, there are two things. Like there are things which I already know, so they get revised, and there are the second are things which are kind of new. Like I remember that in one of the Midnight Expresses, especially the one which covered BMW, you discuss how to deal with the mercury spill. The exact question came in this INICT exam. So that was there. And about the notes, because I was use them while traveling, I couldn't make specific notes. But then I tried to do like most of the important Midnight Expresses just a few days before the exam.
Okay. Nice. Why I'm asking this in detail is because a lot of students do ask me how to, use these classes. Basically, do we make notes from scratch? Do we see them for the sake of it? So I think to each his own, but that is one good strategy wherein, once you're done with your revision, you use them as a rapid revision of your classes, of your notes. All right. Let's talk about the exam that INICT was. A lot of people found it strange. For some reason, there was a lot of outrage after the exam based on a few questions like letrozole, THAF, and CA larynx. But I feel such bouncers are always there. Such questions are always there. And if we go on picking like these two, like few questions, 5-10 questions, which will always be crazy, it is not very atypical of AIMS to put such questions. So like, what was your takeaway? What was your first reaction after you like came back from the exam?
So again, like I was kind of scared after like giving the exam, because the exam was like a grant, like you can say it was, I gave it with the mentality that I'm giving another grant test, but then at the end of it, I was a little scared because I felt that I marked a little less. So I usually in my grant test, I used to go like too aggressive. I used to mark like 197 to 200, but in this exam I could mark only 192. So there were a lot of questions which were like I didn't knew anything about that. Like there was one question on had a half-life of letrozole, as you said. There was one question on the active metabolite of cyclophosphamide.
Yeah.
So like that was one scare in me. Like I marked a little less because everyone says in IICT you should aim for the positive rather than the negative. So that was there. But then my like thought process behind leaving those questions was basically I didn't know any of the four.
Yeah,
I couldn't rule out any of the four options, but then there were a lot of questions apart from those 8 which I had a doubt in, but since I could rule out like 1 or 2 options, I went for like I marked the question, and I didn't mark anything for review. So what I used to do, like whenever there was a question which I couldn't get or I was a little confused, I didn't used to mark it for review because everyone knows that mark for review questions are not considered for evaluation. So I have to write it on the paper because we have the back of the admit card as a rough. So I used to write it on the paper and come back to it at the end of the exam. Okay. So that was like my strategy, and then and then the main thing I focused on was like ruling out the option, because I feel the exam was the questions were a little simpler, but the options were complicated.
Were tricky. Yeah, that is how AIIMS usually is. And I feel something that worked in your favor in this case is actually your lower attempt. Surprisingly, it's the other way around in most cases. But because of this paper, when you have so many questions, like at least 10 odd questions, wherein you just can't, reach the answer. Like, how do you guess the T-half of something, right? So such questions are definitely something that you have to be smart about and not be very aggressive that, okay, I have set out my mind that I'm going to mark full paper, I'll mark full paper. No, you don't have to be, it is not set in stone. Be smart while giving the exam. And that is again something that the students giving NEET can also take, away from that. While giving the exam, you have to actually have the sense of how the paper is actually looking. If it's a difficult paper, I always feel that attempting lower will always be in your favor, because the clustering will be lesser in this case, right? When the clustering is more, a higher attempt actually helps, because one guess correct here and there will actually give you that additional marking. So a good thing basically that you have pointed out as far as the attempt goes. And always, if you can rule out one option, you got a mark, you got to attempt that seems to be the common message. Apart from that, what do you think should be the final week strategy for students who are giving NEET? Not even final week. What do you think, if you were giving NEET, what would you have done in the final 3 days now?
Okay, so like I think the most obvious thing is not to go for anything new. Like don't go for new concepts, don't go for like new topics, because that it's going to waste your time, and it's very less likely a question is going to come from that. And secondly, like just keep on revising your notes. Try to revise your notes as much as possible. Like about giving tests, don't give any tests. Just dedicate your whole time revising your notes. Try to cover all the 9 notes of your 19 subjects. Like try. What I feel is that you should try to strengthen your own, like your existing knowledge base rather than making a new one, because from my experience of giving competitive exams, also USMLE and also like NEET and like UG and PG, the exams, the scores and ranks are less about what you don't know, and they are more about what you know. Basically, what I feel is that the rank is much more decided by not making silly mistakes rather than getting the crazy questions correct. So my message would be just do what you were doing, like whatever you have, like try to make that strong.
Get the basics right. Basically, it all boils down to getting the basic concepts right, and the questions which are bankable. You got to get them correct and not focus on getting crazy things correct. They usually don't make a difference in the end. So thank you so much, Nehar. I think that was quite insightful even for me, and I hopefully will help out the students who are listening to this. Again, congratulations from the Unacademy team. Hopefully I'll see you around at AIIMS, hopefully in the medicine department. Yeah, so good luck on the counseling, and all the best for your residency.
Thanks, ma'am.
Okay. Yeah, bye. I'll just